Hello, everyone. Today we are again meeting in our series of interviews, learning the case studies of KMers. I wanted to say KM experts, but yeah, they're also KMers, and some of them are great KM experts, as we will know today, from all over the world. And today we are meeting Ved Prakash from India. Ved has over 30 years of experience. Please read my lips. 30 years of experience, 18 of them leading KM in large organizations. Ved works in Trianz, and he is leading the KM journey in Trianz for the past 18 years. Ved, nice having you with us today.
Thank you, Moria. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, please. Do you want to add something?
Sure, just a small correction. I've been leading KM in multiple different organizations over the last 18 years. It was in Wipro Technologies, 250,000 strong organization, then in CGI, which is close to 90,000. And after that in Trianz, which is today 2,200 odd people. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. And it's coincidentally on the auspicious day of Diwali, the Festival of Light, celebrated not just in India, but around the world. Uh, so Diwali symbolizes victory of good over evil, victory of light over darkness, and coincidentally, victory of knowledge over ignorance. So what better day than this to really talk about the knowledge management journey in Trianz? So coming to
So there's no
Trianz.
coincidence in life.
Yeah, very aptly said. So
yes,
coming to Trianz.
Yes, what's Trianz? What type of company is this?
So Trianz is a digital transformation consulting firm based out of the Bay Area in the US. It has been on operation since the last 23 years. And over a period of time, it has moved from management consulting to also offering IT services and has now gravitated towards IP-based platforms as well, which have been hosted by the likes of AWS. So it has been primarily in the area of cutting edge technologies when I talk of digital transformation. So whether it is moving applications and infrastructure to the cloud, whether it is providing digital solutions or the big data analytics that we talk of today or cybersecurity, etc. So it has been on the leading edge through and through. And I was fortunate enough to really come into Trianz when there was nothing called knowledge management in the organization. And that was a prime reason that I was picked up for the company because it was going through a very rapid phase of growth. And this was 8 years back. And obviously, with the technologies changing at a very rapid pace, the clients, primarily in the US, grappling with how do you leverage on that technology to meet with the online only competition that they were beginning to encounter. Right. So the challenges were manifold, technologies were evolving, the use cases for business were not very clear. So there was a lot of experimentation going on. And Trianz was acquiring a lot of such experience in tits and bits all over the place, across industries, across technologies. And they were not able to handle the massive growth that the company was experiencing. So when I joined, the company had doubled in a period of 6 months. Right.
Wow.
And that's.
Just give me the numbers. When you're saying doubling from how many to how many?
So approximately 300 odd to approximately 700 people when I joined. And today it is 2,200 plus people.
And you're speaking about 300 to 700 in India or worldwide?
That's worldwide, with 80% of people being in India on an average.
And
So
they
it was a
decided to
distributed team.
start with knowledge management with someone from India and not from the base, not from USA.
So good question, Moria. It was a corporate knowledge management strategy that they were looking at with no differentiation between the consultant sitting in the US or in, in Australia or Europe. or even Middle East at that point of time, or in India. So it was a total enterprise knowledge management strategy that they were looking at. So the people in the geographies outside of India were primarily client facing. Right. And the people sitting in India were the more technology oriented people who were developing capabilities on new technologies and delivering the same for the clients around the world.
Interesting. So they decide somewhere at 2016 to start their KM journey. What changed? It was because of them doubling that they understood that they have to manage their knowledge? And what were the main business needs at this initial point?
So the main business need was obviously one is to handle the growth because everybody was more than stretched for the bandwidth that they had. The second is that different pockets were doing excellent work for the clients or as part of proofs of concept. But rest of the organization was not getting to know about it. So there was a lot of reinvention of wheel that was happening at that stage. Right. So Trianz was not able to put the best foot forward when it came to the overall capabilities and the experience that it had on some of these emerging areas. The other reason was that there were a lot of use cases that were being worked upon in small projects for different clients. Those use cases were actually relevant to other industries as well, not just to that particular industry in which the use case was being developed, but in others as well. But the key element missing was the knowledge about those use cases itself. Right. So they found that the missing link was the flow of knowledge, the flow of connects between people. Everybody was so busy. So they were busy with their own clients, interacting with the clients in the US or in the work that they were doing based out of India. So that was the missing link. And the question was, how do we plug that information gap? And the answer very clearly was knowledge management. So that was the thought process of the top management, and that's how I was brought into the company, from CGI at that point of time.
So let me see if I understand, because I think that we see here things that may be typical for additional companies. We're speaking about A, growth of a company. So people have to have the professional knowledge on how to consult on what our solutions, starting with the principles of how we work through methodologies and processes, through what tools do we use when, and best practices. All four levels should move on to the next generation, to the growing people, to the additional people, and they had a problem in this stretch. Need number one. Need number two, if I
Mhm.
understand, had to do with what we see in every consulting company where we reinvent the wheel and we have small silos with solutions. Even if we have the known processes, the known methodologies and tools, the best practices are developed, are created when working in specific organizations. And moving, and they probably had very good communication within these teams, but
The
between the
silo.
teams
Yeah,
we had these silos, not enough um, forwarding the knowledge. And because it's a consulting company, your your main asset was the knowledge of the people.
absolutely. It was both the knowledge as well as the rich content that they were creating. So it was a combination of both explicit and tacit knowledge over there. Right. And remember, it was new knowledge being created because these were all upcoming technologies. Right.
Wonderful.
And the experts were being brought in, they were relatively new to the organization. So there was nothing called the old boys network, for example. Obviously, there was some, but for a lot of experts who were coming in, it wasn't there. So everybody was sort of clutching at straws when trying to build or put a solution together and grappling with getting the right knowledge about the organization itself. So there were other ills as well besides the siloed mentality that was existing. It was also about getting the latest or a single version of truth about many different capabilities, for example, or about the organization itself. Right. So the single version of truth did not exist. There were duplicated documents which were out of date, which is natural when you have multiple versions of the same knowledge asset lying in different places. There were other challenges as well. I started by talking to the key stakeholders, for example, first at the leadership level. So there were practices of different kind, cloud, analytics, digital, infrastructure, security were the key practices. Right. And then there were the geos too. For example, US West or US East or US Midwest, or it could be Middle East, or it could be the Australia kind of a geography, or even India. It's not that there weren't customers in India, though much lesser in number. So there were multiple axes on which different stakeholders were working. And as you rightly pointed out, it was more of a siloed kind of a thing, where while opportunities for collaboration were humongous, but it was not really being used to its full potential. Right.
So I'm a bit, if I would be a new knowledge, you weren't a new knowledge manager at that time, but any typical knowledge manager would freeze because there are so many needs and you have to prioritize. You can't do everything all together. So if you can share with us what was, I understand that you spoke with people on the management, you spoke with people on the units, and you spoke with people by geography, and you spoke with, so you get a whole bunch of needs. Where do you start? How do you decide where to start?
Good question, Moria. So I took a very structured approach over here. Uh, After interacting with some of the stakeholders, I also interacted with people below them because their knowledge needs are slightly different from the team below them. At different levels, the knowledge needs themselves are different. So you could say I carried out a knowledge mapping exercise, looking at how do they define knowledge itself in their minds, and what kind of pains are they facing with respect to access to that knowledge. Right. They could be creators or they could be consumers of that knowledge as well. So the whole idea behind knowledge mapping, where I used a self-built tool for that, an Excel-based tool, captured, the knowledge aspects for each of these stakeholders at different levels in the organization. So I came up with what is the current status of knowledge for these stakeholders, as well as what they want it to be, the as is and to be, continuum that we look at. This also helped me identify what are the gaps in knowledge that exist in the organization at a macro and sub-macro level.
How
Right.
long did you take? Did this take this a grand mapping of 600 or 700 people?
So this took around, 10 to 12 weeks. But at the same time, there were parallel activities happening in terms of arriving at a knowledge architecture for the organization, for the future state. Right. So even as I was receiving the inputs, I was also analyzing them to come up with the knowledge architecture for the organization. Right. The
Okay.
knowledge architecture included what kind of knowledge flows would be there, what would be the taxonomy that would befit the organization, both from a business development viewpoint as well as the competency building and the project delivery viewpoint. Right. So I was gathering all those inputs, mapping them, and the knowledge architecture then led me to analyze what could be a technology architecture for the organization. Because platforming was key, because it was distributed teams, everybody is highly tech savvy. That was a benefit that I had, that everybody works on technology. Right. So that was not an issue in terms of uh, enabling knowledge management through a technology platform. But there was another big challenge over there. Believe it or not, when I started doing this assessment in the first 10 to 12 weeks, I discovered that there were 18 different platforms that were being used for collaboration as well as managing content. Half of them were paid. So, can you believe the revenue leakage that was happening? Different people were using different platforms, including the likes of Dropbox or XYZ. So one of the challenges I had was to consolidate the knowledge platform too. And that was a huge change management exercise because when, as an end user and as a key business stakeholder, you're used to working in a particular style, making you move from that style to a convert style is a problem of a different dimension altogether. It's a small company, relatively. They are having that flexibility to run things the way they want. It's a growing organization, right? So it wasn't very process oriented at that point of time. So I actually did an analysis of all the platforms that were available, the practices of managing content and interacting with each other or with the clients. Looked at that as well, and then came up with a recommendation. And there was, quite a resistance to that recommendation, I must say. But I was able to convince the top management of that. And the recommendation was building a knowledge management ecosystem around the Office 365 environment. Multiple reasons for that. One is Office 365 was already being used for its mail services and Active Directory, right, and all that. The second was that the entire O365 environment was already paid for with the KM capabilities that I was looking for, whether it was for collaboration or whether it was for content management. Right. So those capabilities were paid for. There was no point in investing in a best of breed tool, so-called best of breed, because these are also moving targets, right? Something which is best of breed today may be overtaken by something else, right? So that's a constant catch-up game. One can't look at best of breed. And my firm belief is that knowledge management is not about technology. It's purely about the knowledge behaviors of the people who are using or who are operating in that KM ecosystem. So technology is just an enabler. You may give the best technology or the worst technology. If the behaviors of people are right, behaviors with respect to sharing their knowledge and learning from the knowledge of others, if that is appropriate, then technology, obviously you want to give good technology. I'm not saying that you should give something highly basic, but it should not be the overriding factor, is what I mean. So we were able to converge on the O365 environment with multiple conversations with different stakeholders on convincing them to move towards it. In some cases, it was relatively easy by rationalizing it. In some cases, it was finally with the chief executive saying, "This is it. We are going to do this." Right. This is how it exactly worked. And after that, I started building because the knowledge architecture was already there. Then I started building the foundational elements of knowledge management,
Wait a
whether it
minute.
was the taxonomy.
You're
Yes,
going on. So let's take a break for a minute. What you're
sure.
sharing with us, some takeaways I'm listening is that even if there's no knowledge management at the beginning, when they decided to start, there are a lot of knowledge based activities. They just don't know to call it knowledge management. A. B, it's a
Correct.
good thing, but sometimes it's also a less good thing because it won't align with a unified way of managing the knowledge. And when we come to one company, it's always important that we do things that are aligned wherever it's relevant. C, unsurprisingly, today, even if you have no knowledge management, you have a lot of knowledge management supporting technologies. And in your
Correct.
case, because there was a lot, it was a technology-oriented company, so you had many technology platforms on in the beginning. And four,
Yes,
in
absolutely.
order to start, you almost at the day one had to start with the most challenging activity of changing the habits of people. And change management,
Mhm.
as we KMers know, is wow, one of the most uh, highest challenging problems that we tackle. Okay,
That's right.
but you came, I hope, with a lot of spirits and a lot of strengths and a lot of belief that you can do it. So, okay, continue sharing with us the journey, how you go step by step, and because people don't like to do. They want you to give them service. They want them to to give them value, not to them to change so everything is in one truth and in one way of writing. That's not what they are interested in.
Right. So one of the key things that I did was, so once we converged on that, yes, the KM platform will be around this particular technology, and there are multiple apps available for that. Then we started looking also simultaneously at what are some of the big pain areas that different stakeholders had pointed out. And we designed knowledge management initiatives around that. So one of the common pain areas expressed by everyone was around the content aspect. That we have siloed content. It is either with the individual or with the team at maximum. So how do we take that content out and make it organizational knowledge, which is easily accessible, which is very searchable, right? And where you can zero down on what I'm looking for as the end user. So design it in a scientific way. So that was one of the challenges that they had. The second challenge was around how do we better cross leverage the strength of different silos that were existing, right? And that's where the collaboration aspect comes in, right? A third challenge was around that we are working for a client, for example, and there are multiple projects that are being undertaken with different parts of the client. Now, even that knowledge has to be pieced together. You could say that could be a silo, but even there were multiple sub silos within that. Whereas, as a client partner for that client or the delivery manager for that client, I want to know the full picture in one go. Even the team members for that client, I would want them to know the full picture, right? Even if they're working on a small piece of engagement for that client, showing the big picture within the confines of that client. So some of these challenges that come out very clearly, and I set about taking those as priority areas. So it's important to look at what are the pain points which will make an immediate impact. Then also within that, identify what are the low hanging fruit. Because while we always say that a KM program typically takes 18 to 36 months before you start seeing the benefits. But we are also operating in a very agile world. So people, the executive sponsors of the program want to start seeing some results coming out, where some stakeholder says that I'm seeing this benefit, right?
Wonderful. So we're speaking that you are all the time working in three levels at the same time, parallelly. One is the long-term level with a digital platform, the one taxonomy, the one version of truth.
Repository, yeah.
The second would be the business activities, the projects of now building a knowledge base or now adopting or changing the knowledge flow of some specific topic or way of working. And you will share with us what type of KM solutions did we find there, because I hear internet and portals, but maybe there are additional things. And the third level you're speaking is if we spoke about the long term, the medium term. So you're speaking also about the immediate term, short term of quick wins, low hanging fruit, showing them that you don't have to wait 18 to 36 months. You are getting added value today, tomorrow, again and again.
Sure. Yep.
Important takeaway. Let's continue. What type of KM activities were there in this story? KM solutions.
So when you talk of KM solutions, we had multiple threads that were running. One that were focusing on the content aspect, the explicit knowledge aspect. The second was focusing on the tacit knowledge aspect. The third was focusing on the culture building aspect, which included the change management. As we said, I always say that KM program, I view it more as a change management program. Right. So the third thread was around the culture building aspect. So on the explicit knowledge aspect, we started by looking at the knowledge architecture that had been arrived at and implementing it in the form of multiple organizational repositories so that individual and team knowledge actually becomes organizational knowledge. Otherwise, when the team closes the project and goes away, that knowledge gets lost. When an individual moves into another activity, that knowledge gets lost. Or if they move out of the organization itself, then also that knowledge gets lost. So the idea was, how do we have this knowledge become organizational knowledge so that it can be accessible to all? So over there, we focused on, as part of knowledge mapping, we got to know what are the different types of documents that people have. So they could be related to, for example, sales and marketing. They could be related to thought leadership, like white papers and points of view. They could be related to domain knowledge, like the industry knowledge, for example, or the functional domains like supply chain management or finance or HR, etc. It could be related to technology or different technology programming paradigms or platforms or different types of cloud, etc. Another was around generic knowledge coming out of different engagements. Right. There were there were training materials of different kinds. There were process knowledge for different kinds of solutions that were being provided. There were also processes that were created, including templates and checklists and all that. So that was the document part. The second important repository was around reusable components that could be applied in engagements. These could be business components or technology components. So business components could be things like use cases or the requirements for a particular functional area. Right. So for example, if you are building a claims processing engine for a client, the generic domain knowledge is actually common across, even if it is for a competitor. Right. So that gives you a sort of, an accelerated way of working on engagement. So you have benefits of time to bring it into production, and you have benefits of reducing the overall cost of implementation because you're reusing a big chunk. That's the fundamental thing. On the technology side, you had these accelerators, you had these code-based components, you had design patterns and frameworks, you had test cases, you name it, they were there. Right. You just had to abstract it and make sure that it is available in the organizational repository for everyone to be able to access them and make use of them. The third part was also around streaming content, the third repository that we built. Because it's not just documents today, it's also a lot of streaming content where people acquire knowledge or share knowledge. Just like we are talking, and this becomes streaming content, knowledge sharing of experiences, right? So tacit knowledge, a lot of it, we would hold these knowledge sharing sessions and record them. You'd also edit them to make sure that the relevant portions are visible. And there was just like a YouTube, we actually created something called a KTube, where it was categorized into multiple, buckets, so that you could access those recordings more easily, right? And they could be accompanied with some content that was lying in, say, the content base called KBank, right?
So you're saying
Then,
that as to explicit knowledge, you spoke about first level of a full ecosystem where all materials are kept in the same categorized way. B,
yeah.
on a more high level, maybe spotlights to use cases and materials that can be reused. That was
Mhm.
explicit knowledge. When we came to the tacit knowledge, your idea was to record people, because when you people speak, it's more easy for them to share their thoughts and their tacit knowledge. So the main solution, maybe not the only one, but the main solution is through recordings of people as to their tacit knowledge.
So what we did was, Boria, extending it a bit more, what we did was we created communities around the key practices. And there were sub communities within that. Now, every community, the key practices had a common charter. Why was that community existing? That was a common charter that we arrived at collectively with the stakeholders. The executive sponsors was the practice heads. So these were formal communities with their own charter, and the individuals in the organization, and this was as the organization was continuously growing. So the individuals were aligned to multiple practices. Now, going by the charter, they had their own cadence, which was defined upfront for the entire year, where knowledge sharing was one of them, managing content for that particular topic in the organizational repositories was another. Maybe coming up with innovative solutions was another. Those kind of things were there where the community would work together on that. Specifically on knowledge sharing, since you talked about that, we had different kinds of knowledge shares where it was things like know your solution, know your platform, know your client, know your expert, know your engagement. Under different subhits, we used to have people come in and speak about it. The invitation would go not just to the community, but to the entire organization as well so that they were free to join at their convenience. And then we would host it in KTube, post the event, so that people can access it at a later point of time. And there were so community feeling brought in that feeling of oneness. Even if they were working in different silos, they were united together by the same community, right?
Wonderful.
So that was a big knowledge integrator for the organization.
I really love it. So when we're speaking about the tacit knowledge, we're speaking about this K-Cube and together with the communities. When we spoke about, you said that there was a third angle that was
Culture,
culture. But what I'm hearing is that through the first two angles, you're already starting to cover and involve and embed the culture, for example, by setting trust between people, by getting them to know one another through the communities. And when you spoke about the tacit knowledge, the idea, the wonderful idea of know your customer, know your platform, know your whatever else, was a way to ease the and focus the way of sharing tacit knowledge.
right. And one thing that I also wanted to inculcate as part of culture building was this sense of curiosity. When one works in a particular task, you're totally focused on that task without looking at what I mentioned earlier, the big picture. So by having these community knowledge shares around these branded things, know your solution, know your platform, I wanted people to get interested in those things as well, just to broaden their knowledge. Because the broader the knowledge, the more you can provide value added solutions. Because in today's world, everything is interconnected, be it the business environment, be it the technology environment, right? So you expose them more and more to various different aspects of working in a real environment, right? So as part of culture building, what we used to do was that obviously communities and even the content part, we use communication very effectively. So we used to have communications around different launches, around different knowledge shares, glorifying the people who were putting their step forward. So if you are a speaker, everybody gets to know about with the photograph and the role that you are playing. And at the beginning of the session, I would personally, or if there is another moderator, they would introduce the individual about their accomplishments in professional life as well as their career journeys as well. So as an individual, they feel good about it. We all know that peer recognition is one thing that every individual looks for more than any monetary reward. So we also set up rewards and recognition mechanisms for different focus areas and depending on what stage of the same initiative it was in. So it's not that it was a consistent common one. Depending on how we were positioning the knowledge initiative there, we would have a different rewards and recognition mechanism. So culture building had multiple elements to it, but it was all centered around people because culture is nothing but the people who make or break the culture, right?
Fast forwarding 5, 6 years towards 2021, too. What are the next challenges of Trianz, speaking about knowledge management? Because it sounds like they have it all.
So, yeah, but it's always, we always say that knowledge management is not a destination, it's a journey. So the goalpost also keeps moving all the time, driven by the business environment, right? So upfront, I mentioned about how Triance has gravitated towards IP-based solutions. So it has its own products also now, and that's the next non-linear growth engine for Triance. So the knowledge management needs of that business are totally different. And that is what the organization is also working on currently. Because the DNA of products is different from the DNA of consulting and services. The
Wonderful.
knowledge needs are different. Everything is different, in fact. While on the surface it may look the same, but underlying constructs are different.
And as I understand, if they're selling a product, they're already selling the knowledge that is related to that product also to the customers. So that also, it's not only another type of knowledge management you need within the company, but also you need some knowledge towards the customers themselves, because now you're selling them IP with products with knowledge as part of them. Last question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The time is flying by. If you meet a new KMer, what would you recommend them based on your story from Trianz, and not only from Trianz, but from all the other companies and organizations and volunteering opportunities that you are working for along the years? What would be your recommendations for others?
So for a new KMer entering into this profession, my recommendation would be that be very close to the customer, your internal or even external customer, depending on the scenario. See that whatever you are doing is meeting a articulated need of that customer in the beginning. And later on, you should develop the capability to sense the unarticulated need as well. That's one. The second is that exhibit a strong sense of patience, because knowledge management typically is something so abstract. They know they need it, but it's not on the top of their priority list, nevertheless. Right. So you need to be very patient, constantly work with them to make it happen, constantly show what value it is delivering to a smaller set of people so that you can scale it to the larger set of people. So it's very important for you to be very close to the people, be it the stakeholders or be it the end users of whatever you are trying to do.
Nice. What are you, last question, what are you proud of?
Okay. So this would be more on a personal side, Moria. I'm really proud of, I have been a KM professional for 18 years, right? And obviously, I have been able to address a huge number of KM professionals through various forums that I speak in, as well as through the ecosystem that I have directly interacted with. But one thing I'm really proud of is that I have two sons. They're grown-up sons. One works in a product company based out of the US, a very large one, and he owns the particular product. The second one has a startup of his own. For the last 3, 4 years, he started it while as a student. And it's a Y Combinator funded startup, which is a very proud moment for a student. So both of them, without my prodding in any way, but I don't know how it has happened. They are extremely knowledge management oriented. And for example, for the elder son who owns the product, in that product, I have seen him working because it was a work from home scenario as well. He's applying KM principles in the way he proceeds with owning that product on the development delivery life cycle as well as when interacting with the end users of that product. The younger son has a the startup has a product called Clozo.io, which basically looks at studio quality videos and documents for health centers of different SaaS products, for training material, whether it is SaaS or non-SaaS kind of an organization, for the sales deck, etc., etc. Wherever you have content and you want a video version of it, small or big, that is where Cluzo comes in. That's a true and true a knowledge management product, and it has more than 250 plus clients across the world. I'm really proud that they have imbibed the spirit of knowledge management without any effort from me. So that is something I'm personally very proud of.
Thank you. If we stopped and we introduced you, Ved, as a KMer with 30 years of experience in professional roles and 18 in large organizations, we now learn through this conversation that you also influence India, you influence in the global market, as I know that you are speaking in all kinds of conferences in other places. And in KMGN, you serve as one of our leaders. And both now I'm hearing, and also now I'm hearing that you are also helping us in your home with your KM spirit to bring a new generation of new KMers that hopefully would be even better than us and will have much more smiles when they do KM, as maybe organizations will accept it even much more. So thank you, Ved, for this fabulous conversation. And it was really a great pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Moria. It was my pleasure as well conversing with you. Thank you and happy Diwali.